A group of well-raised schoolboys is stranded on a beautiful island with no adults, no rules, and no authority. They start out trying to build a civilized little society with order, fairness, and a plan for rescue, and within weeks they descend into tribalism, fear, cruelty, and finally murder. That is the arc of William Golding's Lord of the Flies, published in 1954, and it is usually taught as a grim lesson about human nature, the idea that underneath our manners we are all savages. But that reading is too simple, and it misses the far more disturbing and far more useful thing Golding actually shows you. Because the boys do not become monsters because humans are evil. They become monsters because of how groups behave when fear takes over and accountability disappears. And that is a lesson 2026 cannot afford to ignore. Here is what feels strange about how we remember this book. We summarize it as proof that people are fundamentally bad, that civilization is just a thin coat of paint over our animal nature. But Golding is showing you something more specific and more frightening than generic human evil. He is showing you the precise mechanism by which ordinary, decent individuals become capable of terrible things together. It is not that each boy is secretly a monster. Most of them alone would never do what they end up doing. It is the group, under the right conditions, that manufactures the cruelty. The horror of the book is not what is inside one human heart. It is what happens to many human hearts when they form a frightened, unaccountable mob. Let me reframe the whole story around the conditions, not the characters. Strip away 3 things from a group of normal people, Golding suggests, and watch what happens. Strip away clear rules and structure. Strip away accountability so that no one is individually answerable for what the group does. And add fear, a shared sense of threat that demands a response. Under those 3 conditions, the boys do not gradually reason their way into savagery. They are pulled into it by the logic of the group itself. The cruelty becomes a kind of belonging. The violence becomes a way of bonding against a common enemy. And the individual conscience, which might have said stop, gets drowned out by the overwhelming pull of the collective. No single boy decides to become a killer. The group decides, and the boys go along, because going along is easier and safer than standing apart. To see this clearly, watch the role of fear in the book. The boys become convinced there is a beast on the island, a monster lurking in the dark. There is no real beast, of course, but the shared fear of it becomes the engine of everything that follows. It justifies the formation of a tribe, the worship of a strong leader who promises protection, the hunting, the violence, and ultimately the willingness to destroy anyone who questions the group's beliefs. Golding's deepest insight is that the beast was never on the island. The beast was the fear itself, and what that fear did to the group. The monster they were all so afraid of was the thing they became while running from a monster that did not exist. Psychology has spent decades confirming what Golding dramatized. Research on group behavior shows repeatedly that ordinary people placed in conditions of anonymity, diffused responsibility, in-group versus out-group pressure, and fear will do things they would never do as accountable individuals. The presence of a group can dilute personal conscience, and a perceived external threat can bond a group together precisely by giving it someone to hate. None of this requires that the individuals be evil. It only requires the right conditions. Golding was writing a story about you and me and anyone under circumstances that switch off the things that normally keep our worst impulses in check. Now bring this into 2026, because the conditions Golding identified are everywhere, and they have been supercharged. We live in an age of online groups where anonymity is easy, accountability is thin, Fear and outrage spread faster than anything else, and the pull to belong to a tribe by hating the opposing tribe is constant and powerful. We have all watched ordinary people, individually kind, become part of a mob that does cruel things to a stranger, swept up in a collective fury that none of them alone would have started. We have watched the manufacture of beasts, the way a group invents an enemy to fear and then bonds over destroying it. Golding wrote the manual for this in 1954, set on an island. We are living it on a global scale, and the beach is the screen in your hand. There is an idea in Uzbek culture that one stick is easily broken, but a bundle of sticks together is strong, usually told as a lesson about the strength of unity. But Golding shows you the dark mirror of that wisdom. The same force that makes a group strong can also make it monstrous, because a bundle of people bound together by fear and hatred is just as unified and far more dangerous than a bundle bound by love. The group is not good or evil in itself. What it bonds around is everything, and a crowd that has found its strength in a shared enemy has discovered the most seductive and destructive unity there is. But here is what most readers miss, and it is the thread of hope Golding deliberately weaves through the darkness. Not all the boys succumb. A few of them, especially the ones who hold on to reason, fairness, and individual conscience, keep trying to call the group back to its better self, even at enormous cost. The book is not saying that goodness is impossible. It is showing you that goodness, in a group sliding toward cruelty, requires the rare and difficult courage to stand apart from the tribe, to keep your individual conscience switched on when everyone around you has surrendered theirs to the mob. The tragedy is how often those voices are overwhelmed, but their existence is Golding's quiet insistence that the descent is not inevitable, that conscience can resist the group, and that the people who refuse to be swept up are the thin, essential line between civilization and the beast. I want to add a careful word because it would be easy to walk away from this book with a bleak contempt for humanity, and that is not the right lesson. Golding was not saying people are hopelessly evil. He was warning about specific conditions: fear, anonymity, lost accountability, tribal pressure, and how they can hijack ordinary decency. The point is not despair, it is vigilance, especially about yourself. The most useful thing you can take from this book is not suspicion of human nature in general, but a healthy wariness of the moments when you feel the pull of the group toward cruelty, when fear and belonging start to drown out your own conscience. Those are the moments to slow down, to step back, and to ask whether you are still thinking as yourself or being carried by the crowd. Read Lord of the Flies again, not as a simple parable about how people are secretly savages, but as one of the most precise books ever written about how groups manufacture cruelty out of ordinary people. It gives you language for the mechanism of the mob, for the way fear invents beasts, for the dilution of conscience in the crowd, and it leaves you with a responsibility rather than just a warning. The beast is not in human nature waiting to be released. It is in the conditions we allow, and in the moments we stop thinking for ourselves and let the frightened group think for us. The boys never found the monster they were hunting because they had become it. Golding's question for you in an age built for tribes and outrage is whether you can keep your own conscience awake when the whole crowd is telling you to put it to sleep.
It is worth dwelling on one specific mechanism Golding dramatizes because it is the one most active in our daily lives. Watch how the boys use a chant, a painted face, a shared ritual to dissolve their individual selves into the group. Once a boy puts on the mask of paint, Golding tells us, he is liberated from shame and self-consciousness, freed to do things he never could as himself. The mask is not just a disguise from others, it is a disguise from his own conscience. This is the precise psychology of anonymity, and it is the engine of so much modern cruelty. Behind a username, an avatar, a faceless account in a crowd of thousands, ordinary people put on the same paint the boys did and discover the same terrible liberation. The freedom to be cruel without feeling that it is really them doing it. The self that would be ashamed has been hidden behind the mask, and what remains is the group's appetite, unchecked by individual conscience. This is why Golding's book has only grown more urgent. He identified in a story about children on an island the exact conditions that the modern world has since manufactured at planetary scale. Anonymity that hides us from our own conscience, fear and outrage that bind us into tribes, the intoxicating sense of belonging that comes from having a shared enemy to hunt. The boys had to be stranded on an island and stripped of adults to reach that state. We can reach it on an ordinary afternoon, with a device, without ever leaving our homes. And the same warning applies. The descent does not announce itself as evil. It feels like belonging, like righteousness, like being on the right side against the beast. That is exactly why it is so hard to resist, and why the rare individual who keeps their conscience switched on, who refuses the mask and the chant, is so precious and so often overwhelmed. Tell me in the comments, have you ever watched a group turn ordinary people into something cruel, and what do you think it takes to stand apart from it? If you want more deep dives that turn the stories you think you know inside out, subscribe and check the description for further reading. One honest note before you go. This video uses AI-generated audio and visuals, and it offers reflection, not professional advice. This was just one reader's thoughts offered to make you think.